Hello, my name is Shalisha Vaughn. This week's topic was women of the Revolution era. Let me start by saying this week was really fun. The list of women to choose from was incredibly hard to choose, but I would say that I am a romantic at heart. Therefore, the woman whose story stuck with me and who I decided to research was Jane McRae. Um, Jane McRae was a 17-year-old woman. She was considered to be very beautiful, very innocent, and she was murdered by some Native American soldiers who were helping the British at that time. So what I'm going to do is give you guys a little bit of background about Jane and her family and her fiance, who it also plays a role in this story. So Jane McRae lost her mother at a very young age, and her father and her siblings were moved to Fort Edward in New York. There in New York, she was able to reconnect with a childhood friend whom she had fallen in love with, whose name was David Jones. And she was able to reconnect with David Jones, and they had planned to get married. However, the start of the American Revolution happened and broke out. Therefore, Jane and David were separated because David and his brother went to enlist with the British Loyalists, while Jane and her older brother ended up joining the Continental Army and helped the American forces. So Jane's brother warned her that there would be some action in her area and that she, as well as the women and children of the village, should leave. However, Jane wanted to see if there was any way that she could meet up with David and possibly secretly get married. The plan did not go the way she wanted because, of course, Jane ends up getting killed. Which is in itself a whole story that's mixed with folklore, and I'm not quite sure we'll ever really know exactly what happened to Jane and how she was killed and how she was murdered, but we do know that she was killed on that day, which was July 27th, 1777. So our goal for this discussion was to answer questions from Laurel Thatcher Ulrich, and some of the questions in her article that she had, they were definitely easy to put in terms of Jane McRae. So the first question was, what made her different? What made Jane different was the fact that Jane was very young and very beautiful. It was just much of a romantic story, which I think a lot of people can identify with. And it's one of the things that drew me to her and her story. The next question is, why does her story deserve to be continued into the next century? I think Jane's story is important because it shows the casualties that can happen to citizens in wartime. And those casualties could be big, such as them actually dying, or small, but there's always a human aspect of civilian life that is tarnished or changed by war. So Jane's story, even though she was a young girl, she ends up dying in this conflict, even though she's not the one that's fighting. So I think that's why her story deserves to be continued, because we should always look at what happens to, you know, the regular person or citizens that are not a part of the war, but what happens to them because of a war. The next question is, why is her story so widely accepted? I think her story was so widely accepted because it was sensational. It was horrific in a sense, but it also, in return, helped to spur a sense of American pride, and it helped the American soldiers' cause, and they were actually able to defeat the British in that campaign. So I think her story served a purpose to help, help those forces accomplish their goal. The next question is, how is it important? Why is it important to have a famous female from the American Revolution? I think it's important for us to show that women were part of the American Revolution, even though women did not have the rights at that time. And in most cases, they were not really given all the rights as citizens. They still played an important role. So I think it's always important that we remember the role that women played in the American Revolution. And that was the last question in which I'm going to answer for this discussion. I thank you all so much for discussing this topic with me today, and I'll see you on the next discussion.